The end of an era. Australia's Mr Television, Bert Newton, dies aged 83. Paddy's tears as she bravely speaks about her loss and their enduring love.
Our hearts are breaking because he was just, for all of us anyway, he was just the most wonderful man.
Australians from all walks of life join Paddy in paying tribute to a much-loved entertainer. And in other news, a capsize emergency, the dramatic rescue effort to save lives after a fishing boat overturns off a popular beach. And mending fences, Scott Morrison's attempt to repair relations with French leader Emmanuel Macron at the G20 summit.
This is 10 News First with Chris Barth.
There's a genuine sense of sadness across Australia today following the death of Bert Newton. The man they called Moonface was there at the beginning of television and had kept us entertained on the small screen, on radio and on stage ever since. His incredible career spanned more than 5 decades. And perhaps Bert's unique brand of humour and effortless charm is what's making many Australians feel as though we've lost a good friend.
His smile lit up our lounge rooms for decades, but it was his family that brought joy to Bert Newton. This last picture of him beaming, surrounded by his grandchildren, was posted by his wife Patty just a week ago. Today, she tried to process the loss of the love of her life.
I was with him all day and I left at 7:10 and I was just pulling around to come into my drive and I get the call to say that he'd taken his last breath at 7:22. So I missed him, just, you know. But maybe he didn't want me to be there for his last breath, so he probably left without me there, which is probably a good thing.
It had been a tough few months for the star. In May, he had his right leg amputated due to complications from an infected toe and had been in hospital ever since. COVID regulations meaning for most of that time, the littlest members of his family couldn't visit. But they, like millions of fans around Australia, worshipped the man they called Moonface.
Anyone ever tell you you look a little bit like Bert Newton?
I am Bert Newton.
Out of here! What's your wife's name?
Patty?
Oh, that's a lucky guess. All right.
For a man who once thought about being a priest, life took a very different turn. After a successful start in radio, he took to TV like a duck to water, forging an on-air partnership with Graham Kennedy that would become the stuff of legend.
Whack it down there. Now, be careful, be careful. It's not your best angle, Bert.
Bertie, without you, I'm nothing. Without you, I'm nowhere.
Bert could ad-lib through anything, even a man losing his lunch live.
Right.
Skills that once again came to the fore for the second of his on-air partnerships with the lanky Yank, Don Lane. He also became the face of the TV Week Logie Awards, hosting 19 times and winning 4 gold, and the award for most unforgettable moments. Dealing with a drunk Mod Squad star, Michael Cole.
We're going to post it to you.
And accidentally offending the legend himself, Muhammad Ali.
I like the boy.
Did you say Roy or boy?
I like the boy. There's nothing wrong with saying that.
In 1992, he came to Channel 10, where he hosted a morning show that started out being called The Morning Show, before they switched to the catchier title, Good Morning Australia.
My name is Bert Newton, and here is the news.
Executives were expecting an older audience, but instead Bert became a cult figure among the younger crowd.
Son, I believe you've just floated the idea that we might be selling 9 to Telstra. Is that right, son?
That's right, Mr. Packer, yes.
Well, I tell you what, you get your fluoros and stick them into every office. Yeah, you just worry about what's happening on Channel 10. I'll worry about what's happening on Channel 9. You ever work for me?
No, Mr. Packer,
Well, you'll never work for me.
The show ran for 14 years, or 3,213 shows. And in every one, you learn to expect the unexpected.
I could be totally wrong, but I reckon they cancelled the wrong show.
But Bert stormed the stage as well, starring in The Wizard of Oz, Wicked, Beauty and the Beast and Grease. But the role that meant the most to him was as husband to Patty.
I've got the blanket on.
Oh, lovely, that's code. Yeah. That's right. For me, it's only once a year, and tonight's the night.
They were married for 47 years. And today, as Patty stood with two of their grandkids, Lola and Eva, she tried to come to terms with her new future.
We're all wondering how life's going to go and whether we're going to get through it or not, but we will, because everybody does. And as the 5-year-old just said, then death is part of life, and it's true.
Angela Bishop for 10 News First.
Bert's widow, Patty, has accepted an offer from the Victorian Premier for a state funeral. As the nation comes to terms with his death, close friends and colleagues have paid tribute to a man they describe as kind, cheeky and extraordinarily generous.
To Australia, he was an adored entertainer. To his friends, he was Bert.
We've all lost the most admired television personality that Australia has ever produced.
The man who entertained an entire generation on radio, television and the stage has been offered a state funeral. His widow Patty has accepted.
Bert would love it. He'd love it. I'm thrilled for him. So I think it'll be very nice, and it's a wonderful gesture, I feel, because he's very Melbourne.
News of his death reached the Prime Minister in Rome.
Bert was someone who invited himself into the living rooms of Australians at a time when appointment viewing, and we all used to watch the same thing at the same time. Some will remember that. And he was such a welcome guest.
And his passing has left his friends devastated.
I always had this thing that I was going to, when he got out of hospital, jump out of a big old cake and sing Paddy's favourite song and his, We've Got a Lot of Living to Do. And I'm so sad I never got to do that.
Bert was born to be a television star. I can only say that. It was in him.
They're remembering a man who was relatable.
I think people loved Bert because he was one of us. He could take the mickey out of himself. He didn't mind sending himself up, and he was good for a laugh.
Who was funny.
He and television met each other at exactly the right time. His intellect, his wit, his humour met the Australian audience at just the right level.
Who was thoughtful.
I already kind of just really miss knowing that he exists and his beautiful energy, and he was such a kind person, such a generous person.
But a man who above all loved his family, especially his 6 grandchildren.
I would like him to be remembered as just a wonderful, loving family man that was also a bit of a legend.
He lived for his family and those kids, and my gosh, I can't imagine how sad they must be feeling at the moment.
They're also remembering a talented Australian, the likes of which we will never see again.
Bert, he's irreplaceable, really. There isn't anybody like him. And of course, we don't do that television anymore. He came into everyone's living room, not as a star, but as a friend. And that's what everybody liked about him.
Newton could have taken his style of entertainment overseas and become an international superstar, but Melbourne was his home. From one television network to the next, and in his later years to the theatre, his talents were soaked up by Australians for decades.
You know, he was known as Moonface, but he shone brightly to Australia. and we're going to really miss him.
His theatre family are mourning a man who showered them in chocolates and knew the names of everyone on set, from the star of the show through to the doorman.
I'm just so lucky that I got to share the stage with him a few times. That he was just so welcoming. It just felt like you were old friends from the get-go.
As Australia grieves for a national treasure,
I've been around a while and I've never seen such an outpouring of love for one man.
attention turns to just how we say goodbye.
I think it's perfect that there is a state funeral for Bert Newton. I can't think of a better person who deserves it.
Newton replaced Rob Guest in Wicked after he died unexpectedly. Cast members sang the production's song For Good at Guest's funeral, and perhaps they'll do the same for Newton.
Funerals can often be a sombre time, and everybody grieves in their own way, but I think Bert would like a celebration.
But I know I'm who I am today because I knew you.
A date for Bert Newton's funeral is yet to be set. Candice Wyatt for 10 News First.
I want to bring in entertainment editor Angela Bishop now. Ange, you knew him well, you worked with him, so a pretty tough day for you, I know. But what was it about Bert that's led to this extraordinary outpouring of tributes?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Chris. I think anyone who's been on our screens as long as Bert Newton is bound to prompt happy memories for fans. But in a business that can sometimes be as ruthless as show business, it's the tributes from other stars that I'm finding the most telling. The word you hear most is generosity. When you sat on the couch opposite him on GMA, you never knew what he was going to say, but you knew he was going to make you, the guest, shine. If someone had new music out, he'd have them on to play live, make sure he found out the names of the band and delivered every plug to the letter. And he knew how to play. That's why he was such a brilliant Logies host. If anything went wrong, he'd grab it with both hands and run with it. There's no doubt that at 83, he lived a full life. But his beautiful wife, Patty, said today he was still making plans for what he could do when he got out of hospital. She said he even had his eye on Eddie Maguire's hot seat because he could do it sitting down. I think comedian Adam Hills summed it up beautifully. He said, it's up to all of us to take what he taught us and keep his spirit alive. And Chris, that's what we'll all do.
It's brilliant advice, isn't it? Thanks, Ange. Now to the rest of the day's news, and there were dramatic scenes on a beach south of Sydney today. A massive rescue effort after a small fishing boat capsized with 7 people on board off Bulli. After getting the men to shore, emergency teams worked frantically to save several of them, but one tragically died.
Frantic scenes on the beach as a weekend fishing trip ends in devastation.
This is one of the most tragic incidents we've seen here in the Illawarra.
This was the aftermath of a tinny that capsized with 7 men on board. Lifesavers performed CPR on 3 patients as they lay on the sand, but a 4th couldn't be saved.
It was a scene of carnage with debris washed over the entirety of the beach. We had, unfortunately, victims laying unconscious all over the beach.
The group was thrown overboard around 10 a.m, sparking a huge rescue mission. Lifesavers forced to swim under the boat's hull to pull some of the unconscious men from the water.
7 people went into the water, 6 came out.
But the outcome could have been much worse. Surf Lifesavers happened to be conducting a large training exercise on the water at the same time.
So they had every boat and every jet ski on the beach ready to launch.
It's understood the men weren't locals, and it's not clear if any were wearing life jackets. The volunteer lifesavers and members of the public that bravely jumped into the water to rescue the men are now undergoing a critical incident debrief at the Surf Lifesaving Club, given the traumatic scenes they witnessed on the beach today.
As soon as you know the helicopters are landing, you know something's not right.
Of the survivors, 3 remain in a critical condition in hospital. Police are still working to determine what caused the boat to capsize. Taylor Ryan for 10 News First.
Victoria's Shadow Attorney General has crashed his car while drink driving. Liberal MP Tim Smith blew 2 times over the legal limit after smashing into another car and knocking over a stop sign. He's resigned from Shadow Cabinet and has had his licence suspended for 12 months. AFL star Jordan De Goey is in hot water again after being arrested and charged with forcible touching and assault in New York. It's claimed De Goey and a friend groped a woman inside a nightclub before becoming involved in a fight with a man who stepped in. De Goey spent the night in police custody before facing a court still wearing a dressing gown, where he was released to reappear on December 8. His club Collingwood says it's aware of the incident but is still trying to contact De Goey. Scott Morrison has finally come face to face with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron for the first time since Australia dumped the submarine deal and threw relations between the two countries into turmoil. The pair met during the G20 summit in Rome, and it appears the French are still a long way from forgive and forget.
It was all smiles for the official family photo. The US and French presidents cozying up, leaving Scott Morrison sidelined on the world stage. But behind the scenes, official photos supplied by the Prime Minister's office try to tell a different story. Scott Morrison pictured here with Emmanuel Macron. But a picture really is worth 1,000 words. The French president clearly keeping the Prime Minister at arm's length after the submarine deal went bust.
I said g'day. I said g'day. I mean, at these events, he was having a chat to someone. I went up and just put my arm on his shoulder. I said g'day, Emmanuel, and look forward to catching up over the next couple of days.
But the Prime Minister is hopeful tensions will ease eventually.
He was happy to exchange those greetings, and we've known each other for a while, but, it's just the process of being on the road back.
No bilateral talks were even attempted this time around.
We understood that the relationship is one that's on the way back, and we're patient.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson did, however, carve out some time for the Prime Minister.
I think Scott and I are going to just have literally 10 minutes quietly. Okay, everybody, thank you for your...
Thank you. A 15-minute strictly private meeting was held.
Did Boris Johnson bring it up with you today in your bilateral?
No, of course. I mean, AUKUS is a partnership between three countries.
But
and we had a good...
about Emmanuel Macron and what's gone on?
Well, not in any great length. I mean, they're both issues we're both managing.
The botched submarine deal has overshadowed the entire agenda Prime Minister Scott Morrison came to Rome to push. The Prime Minister today insisting the US and the UK were kept in the loop throughout the entire time while the deal with the French was torn apart. That's despite the US President today saying the whole thing was handled rather clumsily.
Well, all I can say is that we kept the US administration up to date with the status of what our conversations and discussions had been with the French government.
It's a diplomatic stoush that will take more than 4 days across 2 summits to mend. Stella Todorovic for 10 News First in Rome.
Still to come, Victoria hits a major vaccination milestone as the state records its lowest daily COVID case numbers in a month. Plus, the long-awaited reopening regional New South Wales prepares as Sydney-siders are given the all-clear to travel. Alec Baldwin speaks publicly for the first time since accidentally shooting dead his cinematographer. And a little later, we're joined by Rove McManus as he remembers his friend and mentor, Bert Newton.